Hello and welcome to the White Deer Filmmaking Podcast in association with White Deer International Film Festival.
Produced by filmmakers for filmmakers, covering interesting and useful topics related to this wonderful industry that we're in. We'll get it perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's only, what's this, episode 11? Cut us some slack.
We should really, by now, have just about figured out what words are.
How to talk.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So, brace yourselves, viewers. You're going to get bombarded with some puns. I need to think of them because I didn't have the foresight to prepare any. However, let's give some context.
I thought you were going to give context by saying our names.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay, I'm Mark. Hello.
I'm Adam.
I'm Adam, who is once again not on the wire.
But still doesn't mean anything.
No.
But
viewers that come in, or listeners that start on this episode, will have no idea what we're going on about. That's the idea.
No.
It's all Al's fault.
Yeah. Shall we explain it?
Do we want to?
Well, just for the first few episodes, I was
The tech guy.
Well, I was behind the camera and the mics, recording, producing the episode.
Doing all the hard work.
Not necessarily on the wire, but I mean there were
surrounded by
wires involved.
Yeah.
If that's enough for you.
Involved in what, Adam?
Connecting the little magical audio stuff to go from.
God, you really sound like you know what you're talking about.
This magical audio device to. I mean, I'm not sure about audio. I do cameras, but I know that something magic. There's something magic that happens in here.
Yeah. You're more of a visual person, aren't you?
Yes.
Which brings us on to today's interview, which is all about visuals, or the lack thereof.
So you're now talking about the story of the film?
I'm touching on it, yes, because today's is the best horror winner. So actually, I'm scared now. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know what to do with my life.
The
Heaven
interview.
forbid I have to wear glasses ever, because this film has petrified me.
Well, we interview. Let's start by saying we interviewed Stephen Parkhurst.
Yes.
That is who this interview is with.
Indeed.
The film that he directed, is called Near Sight.
Yep.
And we are referring to it like that because, well, should we read the...
Yes, we should actually. We probably have been making that mistake. We've been speaking about these films and we've given little to no context. I think because there's always the difficult subject of broaching how much we can give away about a film. And it is often in this case, when films are on the festival circuit, they haven't been released to the public, so it's difficult to watch them anyway. So we'll give as good a synopsis as we can. Adam?
A woman is stalked by a creature that only appears when she's not wearing her contacts, which have just gone missing.
I mean, simple. Very simple.
But very effective.
Yeah. I've just seen Kaylee, who this week is our on the wire specialist.
That's still not a term.
Because I think do you wear contacts? Do you wear glasses? Well, yes, you should, because there's creatures around.
Shall we? This is falling apart now. So shall we go to Stephen?
We should, but very quickly, stay tuned till the end. We have our code ready for you this week. 10% off, first 50 users, all the rest. Stay tuned till then. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephen. I guess the first question would be, so how did you get started as a filmmaker?
So I went to film school and just got my degree in film production. Lived in Austin, Texas for about a year and a half doing indie film crew work there, which did not pay well and was really fun, but really horrible, if that makes sense. I think anyone who's crewed on indie films can relate. Then moved to Maine for your listeners who don't know where that is, it's northern New England, middle of nowhere. And now I live in New York, and I work more in digital media than in filmmaking. So I'm a video producer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. So this film that you've made, Near Sight, would you say that this is a project that you are doing more as a hobby now, or is it something that you're using to further your career in making films, or is it something separate now?
It's a little of both. It's,
Okay.
because I do video production for a job, I like to do my own stuff to just kind of remind myself why I like producing videos and films. And also, ideally, I'd like to get to a point where I'm moving more into film and television, away from digital media. So, it acts as a calling card. Like if it does well and people recognize it, that's great. And at the very least, it's something for me to do just so I can enjoy, the process again.
How long was the production time for the film? How long were you shooting for?
We shot it all in one night.
Okay.
Yeah, which you can probably tell if you've seen it. I wanted something quick, and I wanted something that I could knock out really fast. I had the idea for quite a while, and then it just kind of worked out where I was trying to think of something to do, and that popped into my head again. It was like, well, the apartment I live in now works. The layout is right, so I think I could make this work.
Oh, yeah, it does look familiar now you mentioned that. Yeah.
So overall, was it kind of a quick thing? Was the post-production fairly quick as well, or did you fit it in around everything else?
I had to fit it in and around everything else, editing after work, because, they don't like it when you edit your own stuff at your job, it turns out. But, apart from that, it was a reasonably fast turnaround. I think the biggest thing was just doing the color correction and getting the composer, the rough edit, then a fine edit, so he could do his thing. But it was only a couple of months, really. It was pretty quick.
So how much of it did you do yourself, and how much of it did you outsource for, a composer?
I'm definitely not a music composer. And I outsourced the color correcting to a friend of mine who was also the DP. So, we worked together. We were in the room together, but we did that on DaVinci. But the editing was, I just did myself. And, editing and directing. And I guess if you can call it writing, since there's no dialogue.
How did you find that without having dialogue? Do you think it aided the film, created the atmosphere of the horror, or was it a hindrance in any way at all?
I hope it aided it. That was a conscious choice because I wanted something that could play anywhere and wasn't reliant on people speaking English. I wanted it to kind of be accessible worldwide, and I thought it was an interesting challenge to tell a story without dialogue. That's something I've always admired when you see that in other films. So I thought it would be a fun challenge to tell something as quickly as possible without any dialogue to help me out and see if we could do it.
Yeah, well, it's that it's playing on that show instead of tell thing, which is always preferred, I think, in storytelling, and I think it definitely works in your film. And one of the other festival director that we have, Al, who isn't here today, he instantly said, because he wears glasses, he instantly said that the visuals you chose for the film really reached him personally, because it's so relatable. He's often had experiences where he's not had his glasses on and he sees something and he's like, oh, what was that? But obviously it turns out to be nothing. Of course, in your film, there is something more sinister there, which is terrifying, I have to say. But previously you spoke, before we start recording, about a strategy that you had. Now, I just wanted to briefly touch on that and sort of if you can outline what that would be so we can sort of delve deeper into what you may have planned in pre-production to help our listeners who may be wondering about different techniques that they may want to try, things like that. Is that okay? Could you go into that in a bit more detail?
Sure. Well, when I was talking about strategy, I kind of just meant there's a super short film that I really admired that I think probably a lot of your listeners have heard of called Lights Out. And the director of that turned that into a feature. He just did Shazam, the big DC movie. And so it's like 5 or 6 years old now. It's a great film. If you haven't seen it, definitely look it up on YouTube. But that did very well. And it's a similar idea of just a very short horror film with no dialogue. And I thought, doing something similar with this idea that I'd already had, I just needed to adapt it a little bit to make it, as short as possible and as simple as possible. And so my strategy there was like, well, there's a possibility that this will catch on online and get in front of a lot of eyes and people will notice it. And so then I also, don't have a ton of money to spend on a budget. I didn't want to do like a Kickstarter or ask, family for money or anything like that. So this was something I knew I could afford to do. So it was kind of twofold there. It's like, well, it's a good idea, I think. And it's something that isn't going to, bankrupt me if it doesn't go well. So that was kind of my thinking behind it.
Brilliant. As a question, have you found that any audiences that you may have shown the film to, do you think that they are more receptive to a shorter film over one which is maybe even 10, 15 minutes? Do you think a smaller 2 minutes or so film is much more appealing to audiences?
It's weird. I think I designed this to mostly be online because I know that's where people watch everything now anyway. And I think a few years ago, people were more receptive to very short form stuff. And I think nowadays the trend is going longer. And I know it's hard to say if it's audiences or if it's the algorithm, but I know YouTube specifically favors longer content. So it's tough. I think it depends on the mood you're in. I think in the right place, a super short can be great. And, in the festivals it has played in, it seems like it seems to work better actually in festival settings maybe than even in online settings, which isn't something I anticipated.
Brilliant.
I think the strategy overall is good to hear, and it makes a lot of sense because, like you say, with the director of Lights Out, just a concept that could be turned into something longer, but is quite efficient to produce. And it's also kind of with the online kind of stuff, just testing the water with it, maybe multiple different kind of ideas and seeing what kind of works. It makes a lot of sense, I think, to be able to test the water, I guess, and just see what people are responding to before you go and invest something big, especially in I think it makes sense for people to watch a slightly shorter film and get invested, but then you also get short films that don't give you enough or give you too much to take in, like a 3-minute kind of chunk. But I think yours really was self-contained enough to be a good short film, but then also had room to expand out of. So do you have kind of any plans at the moment as to how it's been received and whether you will be taking it forwards, or have you got any other kind of ideas on the table?
I mean, I'm not really planning on taking it any further. I did, just as sort of an exercise, I came up with like a synopsis or a treatment for what a feature would look like, just in case. But so far, no one has come knocking at the door about that. So if somebody were to approach me, then I would obviously, love to move forward with that. But at the moment, I'm working on a new short. I don't usually with my stuff, I don't tend to like try to push it any further. I figure I just want to do one thing, have it be done, and move on to the next thing. And then if somebody else is like, "Hey, this is great, let's do more of it," awesome. That's fantastic. But that's not really that's not my plan overall, generally.
Is this new short that you're working on, is it going to be a similar kind of thing as Near Sight, so very short, or is it a bit longer?
And is it horror as well?
Yeah, is it a different genre?
It's more of a dark comedy. It's definitely going to be longer. It's probably going to be between like 5 and 7 minutes, so not super long. But it's basically, I don't know how much over in the UK you guys are familiar with the Why I'm Leaving New York essay. So the author Joan Didion did one, which is very famous and very good. And now, especially in the last few years, anyone who's lived in New York for like 2 years will write an essay when they leave about, oh, how terrible New York is, but also how they'll miss it. And it's really corny and lame. And so it's sort of a play on that, but it's about the apocalypse, or at least about like a sort of a dystopian future. And so
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't want to give more of it away than that, but that's
No, of course,
the general gist of it. So it's different, definitely different tonally. It was another idea that I'd had for a while and never really done anything with. But, just wanted to kind of, I'd taken a long break of working on my own stuff as I was kind of just doing the digital media stuff and had been kind of getting burned out on that. So after Near Sight, I was like, well, that was really fun. I'd like to do another thing and kind of make it a little bit more regular for me to do that. So that's kind of my process now, I guess.
Fantastic. This is a question that I think I've always been really keen to ask people that do make their own content, but also work in a job which is slightly different, has different demands and everything. Is there anything from your job which you use to help you in your creative, in your own content, or is it? I think when I've spoken to a lot of filmmakers, they're always like, whenever they get to their own content, when it's creative, they always sort of let loose, and that's where they can be themselves and explore things. But I'm always curious to see if there's anything which people learn in their jobs which can help them or can give them some sort of knowledge which may be of assistance. Is there anything at all which you may have come across which helped?
Yeah, I think so. I know at my last job, I'm not there anymore, but it was a company called Insider, which did a lot of online video. And it was back when Facebook video was a big deal a few years ago. And so we had to figure out how to catch people's attention really quickly. You literally had 3 seconds to get somebody's attention, because that was the average time it took them to see your video as they were scrolling through their feed. And so I did learn some tricks about just things that will get people to stop and watch and keep them engaged. And obviously the kind of videos we were doing there were very different, especially back then compared to now. It was a lot of text on screen, audio optional, that kind of a little spammy content sometimes. But it did do a good job of at least grabbing people's attention and, getting a lot of views. And so I think like that was probably the biggest lesson, was just like, there's so much stuff for people to see, especially, online, that you have to give them something that is going to hook them quickly and keep them engaged and get them to watch through. And that's one thing I have been proud of with Near Sight, just looking at like the analytics. It doesn't have as many views as I'd like, obviously, of course it never does, but the people who are watching are sticking around, and it's like 80% retention rate, which for an online video is really good. I think obviously it helps that it's very short, but even with a short video, it can be hard to get people to actually stay and watch. So I feel like that was a lesson that I was able to take and use here.
Yeah. Do you think it's the premise of the film which is keeping people's attentions, or is it something like an intentional choice or an intentional moment which you think maybe in the first few seconds or so, which is like, yeah, that really grabs an audience member? Or do you think it's the premise, which, because there's a lot of people that wear contact lenses, glasses, is it that in itself which you think keeps people watching?
I suspect it's the premise because, yeah, like you were saying about your other producer, like I wear contacts and when I take them out, I'm blind as a bat. And so it was, the premise was based on a similar experience where, you take your contacts out and you're vulnerable. Like there could be someone in the apartment with you and you wouldn't even see them because you are so blind. And I think it's something like 2/3 of people wear some sort of corrective lenses. I read somewhere, it might not be that high, but it's a significant portion of people. So it felt like something that would be relatable for most people. And even if you have 20/20 vision, it's still an understandable scenario that it's not like, oh, I have 20/20 vision, I don't get this at all. You'll get the concept even if you can't relate. So I think it's the concept because, like I said with the analytics, like the biggest drop off is actually in like the first, I don't know, 10 to 15 seconds. So people will literally click on it and be like, oh, it's a hallway, gross, and I'm out. So I guess if I could change anything, maybe I would even try to get into it a little faster, which sounds crazy for a 3-minute movie. But that's once, I think one thing I'm proud of that we did was we had the point of view shot of her taking out the contact, which was, kind of a cool technical shot that I hadn't really seen much of before. And that happens pretty early on. And I feel like if you make it that far, then you're invested because that's not something you've seen a lot of. And it's like, all right, so what's happening here? Like what, the premise, and now you can see that it's going to have sort of an interesting perspective, I hope. But yeah, who knows? Like it's it's hard to say.
Yeah, sure. Always is.
Were you kind of bearing that in mind when you were kind of writing the concept and outlining what your shots were going to be? Were you kind of like bearing that kind of analytical side in mind at that point, at that early stage as well?
Yes. I didn't know how I was going to do it. Initially, I was thinking it would all be in post. But then my DP actually had a really good idea, and we used split diopters and actually did it all. I think there's a couple shots that are still in post, but a lot of the stuff going in and out of focus was actually done with us just pulling the diopter in and out of frame, which I didn't expect, and it worked better than I thought it would. And I think it definitely worked better than if I had tried to do it all in After Effects. I think it looked a little more realistic and a little bit more it just felt real. Like when you see like somebody made entirely in CGI, you can tell. It's on the same plane as like the Uncanny Valley. You can kind of just tell when it's not quite real. So that was a great idea on his part. So yeah, it was all like something that I had planned for, but he definitely came in and improved it a lot.
I think anything that you can do in camera is always going to look better than afterwards.
For sure. Yeah.
I think it's just anything that is so much. There's just, it's just easier as well. Takes you less time fiddling around in After Effects, really.
For sure, yeah, because I'm not that good at After Effects. Like, I'm fine, but it's not. I could use some more work in After Effects.
So, would you describe yourself as a writer-director mainly? Is that what your intentional kind of area?
I would like to, yeah. Yes, I think for my own stuff, writer-director is appropriate. In my real job, it's producer, kind of supervising producer, I guess. But I definitely prefer writing and directing.
Yeah. So how have you ever taken someone else's script and directed it as well?
I actually haven't. That's always been something I've wanted to do, and I've just never had the opportunity.
Do you think I think one of the benefits of writing your own work is that you instantly are aware of the tone that you're going for. For example, in a horror, it's whether you're going for more of an atmospheric piece or maybe one which is with very clever jump scares or timings, brilliant timings and things, and of course a combination of the both. One possible negative of having somebody else's script to work with, it is then on you to understand what the writer may have been going for in certain situations, and maybe if you can uncover certain differences which may enhance the project as well. It's an interesting
there's always got to be more conversation happening up front, I guess, then. So I guess that can be good, because then the back and forth can create something interesting. But because it's all in your head, you must have known exactly what you were doing from the start to finish, and then got other people's ideas like the DP and everything.
I think it's obviously easier to just direct something you've written yourself, because it's all there, it's all kind of thought out. But one reason I've always wanted to adapt is for that very reason of being able to talk to somebody and bounce ideas around. I find that really helpful. And just like with the DP, having a split diopter idea, when you're writing something with someone or adapting their work and you can talk to them, there's so many things that'll pop up that you never even thought of that will improve it so much, and vice versa, where you might have an idea for their script that they never thought of. So if it's a good collaborative environment, I think that can really yield some really cool stuff. So I would, love the opportunity to do that, and hopefully that'll happen soon. We'll see.
Well, I think we're excited to see what you do next as well, and especially probably more so if it's not horror, to see how you take the good things that you did within the horror film and then take it on to the dark comedy, like you said as well. That'll be interesting, because I guess you're at the stage where you're experimenting around with different genres, different ways of doing it, having fun and seeing what you can create. And I guess that's quite a fun and exciting time, especially if you've got a day job which is also kind of in filmmaking. It's the same world anyway.
I hope I have more opportunity to just, like you said, play around, try different things. I had done a sci-fi short several years ago. I'd done a short documentary, and so this one that I'm working on now is going to be very different from everything I've done, and hopefully whatever I do after that. Again, I don't feel like I've pigeonholed myself into any one genre yet. If somebody wanted to hire me to do a specific genre, great, happy to do it. But for the time being, I definitely want to play around and try as many different things as I can while I have the opportunity.
Excellent. Just wanted to touch on the performances from the actors, and just sort of wanted to get your insight into how much input you had in getting the right performance, or was it something that they sort of got straight away, or was it something that you had to what would be the right word, coax from them in a certain way through direction? Was it something that you had to sort of was there much direction involved, or was it something which you sort of said, okay, I'm just going to leave this to you and we'll see what we get and then go from there?
So I happen to know the actress in Your Side. I've known her for years, and she is very good. So it didn't require a ton of directing on my part, but I've felt like my biggest weakness as a director is in actually directing, the actors and the performance. And that was something I wanted to focus more on this time, which I was able to. My DP kind of was able to just run with it, and I trusted him to do his thing. So I didn't have to focus as much on the technical aspects. And it didn't, honestly, it wasn't a challenge. She mainly got it, and it was more just tweaking. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is, do less, just be smaller, because, you're the camera will pick up tiny little things, and especially in this very kind of claustrophobic environment where it's just her, she can just give the smallest look, and that'll convey quite a bit. So I think like the takes I ended up using were the ones where I think my big direction was like, do less. Like that's I think probably the biggest direction I had in terms of the performance. But she mostly got it. Like she understood the source material. She understood like what I was trying to do. We talked about it beforehand, and so it all was pretty easy. It was a nice, we shot kind of late. It was probably like 2 a.m. by the time we were done. But it wasn't even a full 8-hour shoot. So it was a pretty easy shoot overall and nice. It was one of the more fun times I've had making something.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show what you can do with on a limited budget, with a very limited amount of time. Obviously, that was the idea anyway. But yeah, you can make some fantastic films with really not much at all,
and using the location that you have, and I guess tweaking it slightly. How much did you have to tweak the location to be right?
Kind of had to move some furniture out of the way, just clear out the space a little bit more, set up some lights to give it a little bit of fill, but otherwise not much at all, which was really nice. That was another big part of it. I think, as far as like shooting it all in one night in one location, that was all intentional. And it was also intentional because like I'm getting older, and as you get older, it's harder to get your friends to help out for free or for cheap. So my advice I always give to like people just out of college or just getting into making their own stuff is to do as much as you can when you're younger, because people have more free time. They don't have families yet. They don't have as many responsibilities, and they're just more willing to help out. Not that my friends aren't willing, but they have a lot of stuff on their plate. So this was something I knew, like, all right, I can get a few people to help for a night. If I ask for a week, that's going to be a whole other thing. But I can buy everybody dinner. I can, pay for their, Ubers to get over here, whatever. But it's doable, and that gets harder and harder as, people get older. So that's definitely something I always recommend to people is like, shoot as much as you can, help out on their projects, have them help out on yours, because eventually you're going to have to pay people.
Yeah, it's just the sad truth, but obviously it's the reason why it's a career. But it's definitely when it's a small budget thing, it's that taking it to the next step where you're able to pay people. And I think the people that do work with you on the films, when there isn't anything beyond travel expenses and food and things like that, you really get to it's a really good atmosphere because you're all there because it's for your CV or it's for just experience. So there is a kind of a shared desire, shared passion to bring the project to life. So yeah, it's just one of those really where getting paid would be great on these smaller things, but it's just a big hurdle to get over. But you definitely can make things with very limited resources, and it really didn't
look like it
at all. Not at all.
It was done cheaply.
Exactly.
But I love how you've approached it really smartly. It makes a lot of sense. I think as long as it doesn't detract from the film or make it look cheap in any way. There's obviously been care and attention put into everything, but you haven't. But it's been done in a smart way. So I think that would make me happier working with you if you put all that thought in beforehand. I think that sounds good to me.
Well, and with this project, I knew I storyboarded the hell out of it. Like it was really shot for the edit, where I don't think there's a single shot that we didn't end up using because it was such a tight story. And I knew like everything had to be there for a reason. We didn't have a lot of time and we only had that one location. So, I think that helped for all of us, just knowing like, all right, here's what we have to get, here's how we have to get it, and I talked with the DP ahead of time. He came over to my apartment and we blocked it out, and had the actress there as well, so we could all just block it out together. So once we were on the day, it was pretty quick and pretty efficient. There weren't a lot of changes we had to make. The biggest, I think it took more time to set everything up and get everything prepped, which was, so that was good. And yeah, I think for something like this, that's really important, because it's not like it's an improv comedy where you can just, it's not a Judd Apatow movie. So you kind of have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, just a final couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Where do you ultimately, is there a goal that you want to achieve in your own filmmaking career, with your own content? Is there something which in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, which you could say, let's aim for that, and that would be the dream, if you like?
I think within 5 years' time, having at least directed a feature indie. I'm still not sure how, in terms of actually raising the budget for it. But that's kind of feels like an achievable goal, of moving beyond shorts and actually tackling something feature length that can get some attention, hopefully, and just be fun to do. Like I genuinely do enjoy, as I'm sure everyone listening can relate, just being on set, actually working, and there's so much to do, there's so much going on that you kind of can get lost in that while you're doing it, and then afterwards kind of realize like, hey, that was a lot of fun, and so to be able to do that full time obviously is the goal for pretty much everybody. So yeah, I guess realistically an indie within 5 years would be great.
Brilliant. Well, all the best for that. Really hope it goes well. Really look forward to seeing some more stuff that you make. How can people follow you? Follow your content, your career, anywhere on social media that they can be directed to specifically? I should have probably had that prepared. So on YouTube, I think it's Parkhurst is the channel, and that's where all my shorts are, as well as some other stuff I've done for other digital media companies. And then the website is also just sparkhurst.net. I have all my social media through that, so I'd say those two places are probably the first ones to check out. Thanks.
Well, we'll put links to everything on our website anyway, so people will be able to find them there. But yeah.
Brilliant.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much for speaking to us. What we'll do now is stop the recording and just say goodbye. But yeah, thank you so much. Lots to sort of to reflect on there. So
yeah, and I think inspire others. It's been really good hearing about your process, and how you made Nearsight.
Working smart, definitely. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to that and watching. That was an amazingly terrifying interview to do. Purely because of the film, not because of Stephen. Stephen's great.
The talented guy.
Yes. You may have noticed, or if you're watching this on YouTube, that we are now broaching into the actual shift session for this pub. So we're going to have to make this very quick.
Yep. Well, I thought that was a great interview.
It was.
But let's just let's give the code.
Give the code. Okay. So the code this week, pens and papers, we have WDPOD SP492. And once more, WDPOD SP492. Okay, follow us on Facebook, like, subscribe, do all the rest. Hope you have a good day. See you next week.
Bye.